think I'm entitled?
You want answers!
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth!
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I think President Trump is once again reflecting sentiment that President Reagan had in the 1980s. They both regretted the necessity of nuclear weapons. They dreamed of a world in which we might not have nuclear weapons. But as long as adversaries like communist Russia and back in the day, and today Russia and communist China have nuclear weapons and they're rapidly expanding their arsenal and they're testing their weapons, the United States can't afford to unilaterally disarm. That we have to make sure that our nuclear arsenal is second to none, that it won't be overmatched by the combined forces of Russia and China, that our aging weapons are still usable, and that our new weapons are designed and made properly. So I agree with what President Trump has announced. It's only sensible that in a world when Russia and China are threatening the United States with a rapidly growing and novel nuclear arsenal, that we have to take steps to defend our way of life, because that's what our nuclear arsenal does. It truly defends our way of life.
So there we have Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton making it clear that we do need to update our military, especially nuclear hardware. This follows reports that China and Russia were beginning to expand what programs they have. We cannot sit on the sidelines and watch that happen and not take some action. Now, what action is still unclear. Keep in mind this statement from Trump coming out saying we're going to upgrade our weapons material, especially when it comes to nuclears, comes right after his meeting with Premier Xi. They walked away with a lot of trade deals, supposedly. I mean, you got to really read between the lines, and I'm telling you, it's not easy. I'm looking at all sources I can pull together. Some say they came away with a great deal. Others say they came away with a deal, but it's not formalized. And then you got CNN and the rest saying there are a lot of red flags around this deal. Basically, it's going to give American soybean farmers a good deal in trade with China. And basically, it's going to give us control more in some of the areas where we need it with China. But if they're going to continue to ramp up and prepare for their nuclear weapons and ballistic testing, we've got to do the same. I don't know if that was on the table at all yesterday when they met. Another meeting is set for April. Another meeting between President Trump and Xi is set for April. By then, we will know how far they have gone in honoring the trade agreements he did leave with. And that, I got to tell you, is still very vague in some areas. There are some areas they'll point to and say, well, it's going to help the soybean farmers. Okay, that's great. And it's going to basically give us a better trade, and it's going to cut the punitive tax upon China, dropping their tax from 47% down to, correction, 47% down to 42%. That's good for China, and supposedly is good for us. But Trump is, at the same time, immediately requesting the Pentagon, our Department of War, to start testing nuclear weapons. We know Russia has been doing this recently, restarting some of that. I really don't want to see us go back down that hole again, but we cannot be left to the side while our enemies, our adversaries, are doing it. So Senator Cotton is making it very clear that we cannot just stand idly by. We need to revamp, reevaluate, reappraise, maybe update our nuclear arsenals, where we're going to use them and how. Welcome to hour number one, Larry Connors USA. Here we are, October 30, 2025. You know the day coming tomorrow, right? Yeah, Halloween. We'll be here Halloween. I'll be dressed in my best costume, by the way. For those of you who like to watch the program, it's easy to do so. You go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook or Twitter, Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook, and you tune in tomorrow and watch, and you're going to see me in my best costume I have. I promise you. It will be the very best. Might surprise you. That'll be tomorrow. But here today, we're going to be dealing with a lot of material. And as you know, with Larry Connors, USA, you're going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education. You're going to leave this hour with more knowledge than you have right now. And if by chance you cannot watch the live stream that's being fed at this moment, or you get interrupted and you want to go back and pick it up, and or the audio right now on the radio, well, you can always get that as well as podcast at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, and Larry Connors USA Facebook. And we're on so many different other streaming outfits. I literally cannot keep up with all of them. I hear people from time to time say, well, I heard you on whatever stream. That's good. Glad you did. So what do we have coming up for you this hour? Well, let me tell you in the next hour, Missouri Senator Schmidt on the leftist attacks upon Trump that they are planning and even threatening they're going to do once they get back into office, as if they did not do enough to begin with. Missouri Senator Schmidt will get into more details on that in our next hour. And also, one of the deals we had with China yesterday supposedly involved mineral deals and rights. What exactly does that mean? I've got an expert that's going to break it down for us. Later in this hour, Bill Gates. Are you listening? Are you listening? Bill Gates is suddenly walking away from the green climate altar. All this warnings about climate warming and disaster befalling our world. Bill Gates has suddenly opened his eyes to a whole new world. We'll get into that a little bit later. And, of course, as usual now, at the end of the 6 o'clock, the very last thing, the story behind the story. This is going to involve the illegal wiretapping carried out by a police department that had no authority to do any wiretapping, and one of the targets was a U.S. Congresswoman. Why? Because they could. That's the story behind the story coming up later. Now back to the situation we're dealing with right now, and that is Democrats and what they're trying to do. Speaker Mike Johnson, talking about the Schumer shutdown continues, he makes it very clear that Democrats are demanding crazy things.
There are simple facts about the Democrat shutdown that everybody needs to recognize. Here's 4 of them. First of all, we have to have Democrats to reopen the government. You know that in the Senate, it requires 60 votes to break an impasse. We only have 53 Republicans, so we must have Democrats to do it. The Democrats are out trying to claim that this is all on Republicans because we control the government. We don't control the Senate without 60 votes, so you have to have them. Now they've voted 13 times, those Senate Democrats, counting the House and the Senate together, they voted 13 times to keep the government closed. And what they're demanding as a ransom to reopen the government are some really crazy things. They want to restore $200 billion in health benefits paid for by U.S. taxpayers to illegal aliens and non-citizens.
Yep.
We can't do that.
No.
They want billions of dollars in wasteful programs to be returned to foreign countries for things that none of you would agree with. We are not going to do that.
Nope.
They want $500 million to go back to left-leaning news organizations, paid for by taxpayers. We can't do that.
Nope.
And then they want to cut $50 billion from the Rural Hospital Fund that Republicans got signed into law July 4th to prop up health care in red states and rural areas around the country.
All of it he was outlining, there's not a thing in there you would support. And if Americans are suffering because of supposed cuts right now in Medicare and everything else, why don't you go to the faces of the Democrats and say, why are you giving our money to those who do not deserve it? They didn't earn it here, and they came in, and you're giving them everything we have worked hard for. Caroline Leavitt, the White House spokeswoman.
Throughout this shutdown, Democrats have said this quiet part out loud. Senator Chuck Schumer, the leader of the caucus that is refusing to open the government, said, quote, "Every day gets better as the shutdown continues." Ask the air traffic controllers if every day is getting better, Senator Schumer, and they will tell you absolutely not. House Democrat Catherine Clark said, "There are going to be families that are going to suffer. We take that responsibility seriously, but this is one of the few leverage points that we have." Here is a House Democrat who is admitting that they are using Americans who are suffering as political leverage. And Senator Bernie Sanders said, "If you reopen the government, we lose our leverage." This is pure partisan games. A senior Democrat aide said the party will not end the shutdown, quote, "short of planes falling out of the sky." That is truly a disturbing statement. The Democrats clearly don't care about this suffering. They care about playing political games against President Trump, and this dangerous charade needs to end. The president, in Republicans' position, has been clear and unchanged. Pass a clean, nonpartisan funding bill to reopen the government.
Now, what Caroline Leavitt stated in the reference of planes falling from the sky, pray that does not happen. But air traffic controllers are not getting paid now. And some are calling in sick. That's putting more of a burden on those who are working. They're either going to shut down a lot of air travel. You may not get the flight you had originally booked. And you certainly would get there maybe missing your connecting flight. Or we're going to continue to push the limit until we have a tragedy. We do not want that. The Dems just don't care because, as Caroline Leavitt said, in quoting Democrats, it's our leverage point. It's our leverage to push the American people to buy what we're selling. We're not going to buy it. I don't care what you're selling. I want to give you a breakdown. I credit Newsmax with this as to how some of this money that is being held back for the SNAP program, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, which is needed by 40 to 50 million, quote, Americans, but it's also being siphoned off by those who are not Americans.
Meaning that most of the people getting food stamps from the U.S. government and the U.S. taxpayer are not even Americans. Think about that. And we didn't know about any of this before the government shutdown started. But thanks to Democrats, we can confirm tonight that millions of Joe Biden illegal aliens, people who crossed the border when Joe was president, are now collecting food stamps from a program funded by hardworking American taxpayers.
Yeah, they are getting it because they came across the border. Your dollars are paying for it. You're buying someone else's meal, and it's not a fellow American. It's an illegal. Congressman Seth Moulton, Democrat of Massachusetts, saying we're in the second shutdown of the year because of, and I'm quoting, how ineffective Schumer was at handling the first shutdown. And then he turns right around in the next breath and blames Trump. Pennsylvania Senator Fetterman says, no, the blame is on the Democrats.
As a Democrat, I am incredibly, I've been disappointed, and I refuse to have a political gamble that's going to put those kinds of food security for 42 million Americans at risk on this. Now, some people might be afraid of the extreme left, but I am not one. I am not one of those Dems.
He's not afraid of the extreme left, but yes, too many of them truly are. In the meantime, many Democrats are beginning to break and beginning to surface opposing the radical left in New York City, especially when it comes to, we're nearing voting time. Are you going to vote for Mamdani, really, as New York City mayor? The surveys are changing.
Election day in New York City now just under a week away. The race for the next mayor is getting tighter. Former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo, has narrowed the gap between himself and frontrunner, the Democrat socialist Zohran Mamdani. Take a look at these new numbers. A new Suffolk University poll shows Mamdani is leading with 43%, and Andrew Cuomo is at 33.6%. Curtis Sliwa remains at 10.6%. Cuomo has narrowed that 10 points. It was 20 points away in the last Suffolk poll. Sliwa remains defiant on remaining in this race until next Tuesday, despite growing pressure to drop out so that Cuomo and Sliwa do not split the votes.
That is a very big concern. If they split the vote, Mamdani might get in anyway. Andrew Cuomo.
The gap is closing on its own. What's happening, Maria, is the more they learn about Mondami, the less support he has. What happened early on is, he was very good on social media and everything sounded fine. But now that when you actually look at what he was talking about, there's no there there. Also, the Republican vote for Curtis Sliwa is dropping because people get that Sliwa is not a viable candidate. And really, if you vote for Curtis Sliwa, you're voting for Mondami. And my agenda is much more attractive to the Republicans.
Well, you were feisty in that debate. Everybody said you won that last debate. How can you continue to point out some of these issues that you're talking about when referring to Mamdani and what he will do to New York?
Yeah, well, people get it. They now get the difference that I am the Democrat. He is a socialist. New York cannot survive as a socialist economy, right? He would chase corporations out of this city, out of this state. He would chase wealth out of this city and state.
Already has been doing so. And by the way, so did Cuomo when he was governor of New York. I want you to hear from one New Yorker who is absolutely incensed the fact that Mondami might win.
I asked President Donald J. Trump to ban Sharia law in America, in Puerto Rico, and across all U.S. territories.
You don't like our laws? Get the out of America!
Assimilate or leave. This is not hate. What we say is with truth and love. We will not be silent. You will not use the Constitution against us. You will not use your religion against us. Practice your religion, but it's not going to supersede America, the Constitution, and the people that we are. We love the melting pot. This is America, and it's going to stay that way. If you can't assimilate, you got to go. That's it. I asked President Donald J. Trump to revoke the citizenship of Zohran Mamdani and his father, Mahmoud Mamdani. Have them removed from America as soon as possible. Thank you. God bless New York.
Mamdani has dual citizenship in the U.S. and Uganda. And they're saying, take away his U.S. citizenship, get him out of the country. He wants to practice and push Sharia law. By the way, a new investigation reveals his campaign accepting nearly 13,000 from almost 200 donors outside the U.S. Coming up, Bill Gates walking away from the green climate god. What the hell happened? Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
In all these years that Wellington Environmental has been my sponsor, I've never mentioned their duct cleaning services. Allergy season is here, and Wellington crews clean air ducts daily in homes and commercial buildings, also cleaning air handling units and diffusers in commercial facilities. Why? Well, because people will see black dirt and mold on the vents, or they are actually suffering from allergies. Don't be fooled by low-cost duct cleaning providers saying they charge only per vent, because once they get on site, the price will skyrocket. Wellington does not do this, never has. Wellington will give you an estimate, and you say Larry Connors, and immediately you get a 20% discount. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 314-644-4930. Make your home and business better, safer with Wellington. Be well with Wellington. Back pain? Follow me to Esquire Sports Medicine, where they've got your back. Esquire is the oldest sports medicine clinic in St. Louis. Dr. Draghi and his team of chiropractors can get you back to work, back to life without the pain. New patients usually scheduled within 24 hours. 314-644-0885. 644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Another day must be another roofer in town. John Beal and I were talking. He said, every time you turn around, there's a new roofing company. Many of them have no idea what they're doing, and the statistics show that many will be out of business within 2 to 5 years. Who are you going to call to help you then? You need to remember only one name, John Beal. John Beal Roofing. You have a problem, he can take care of it. And we'll be here for you. John Beal Roofing. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. The offer. St. Louis cannot stop talking about being held over due to popular demand. Right now, renewal by Andersen. Buy any window or door, get the next one 50% off. Plus, you could qualify for 0 interest, no payments for 18 months. Renewal by Andersen is the full-service window and door replacement division of Andersen. You've trusted that name for more than 122 years. And our exclusive FiberX frames, 200% stronger than vinyl. Andersen products are also proven to increase your home value by at least 15%. Don't miss out. Schedule your complimentary consultation today at rbastl.com or call 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS. Renewal by Andersen, award-winning quality, stronger windows, smarter investment.
This is News Talk STL.
You should have closed your windows and got another dog. You should have chained up all the doors and switched up all the locks. And how many times have I prayed?
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. My guest we've had on numerous times before, and he is the author of the book, A Very Convenient Warming, How Modest Warming and More CO2 Are Benefiting Humanity. And Gregory Whitestone, glad to have you with us, sir.
Oh, good to be on with you.
Well,
and,
I want to jump.
Banner week, isn't it?
Oh, it is,
Yeah.
and I want to jump right into it. I'm reading a headline here. Bill Gates makes major climate change reversal after years of doom. People will be able to live and thrive now. What happened to all this doom and gloom?
Well, I'm hopeful that maybe he's actually looked at the science that we've been providing, and I've been talking to you about for quite some time. He was one of the worst of the climate alarmists, and part of this, the danger he posed was the amount he committed billions of dollars to climate alarmist groups, and it's really amazing the U-turn he's taken in this, and in particular. If you look at some of the things he said, it's just been incredible. He said people will be able to live and thrive in most places on Earth for the foreseeable future. Wow. Completely opposite of what he was saying as recently as just 9 months ago, where it's an existential threat, millions and billions of people's lives at risk. He's gone away. Well, and, it's been incredible. And let me just say here. He says, although climate change will have serious consequences, particularly for people in the poor countries, it will not lead to humanity's demise. Well, he got the first part of that wrong, but he got the last part right.
Well, the point he has been making, and even in a book he authored 4 years ago, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster. I mean, we were on the cusp of just disappearing.
Yeah. I've been predicting this for a number of years, and what I've seen are people, there's been a slow change and now a rapid change away from this climate alarmism nonsense into what's actually happening. And I've been saying for a long time, the people like me and my colleagues at the CO2 Coalition, some 200 of the top experts and scientists in the world, are promoting the many benefits of more carbon dioxide. And I have been confident for many years that the truth will eventually win out, and we will eventually get this debate, and we will win it because we have the science, the facts, and the data on our side. They have hyperbole, alarmism and fear mongering on their side.
But,
so eventually the truth was going to win out, and hopefully it is.
But what suddenly snapped in Bill Gates to suddenly come out and say, as you quoted him, climate change will have serious consequences. Yes, no, maybe, especially for those of the poorest, but it will not lead to the demise of humans. What changed?
Well, I'd like to think it's some of the work we've been doing and providing the data that we provide and the facts that we provide.
Greg, go ahead and claim credit for it. Go ahead.
Well, I think we've played a role here because we've been a strong voice and proponent for the facts, and it's really hard to argue, and they can't argue. You know, when we look at, we see the crops are breaking records year after year after year. They're not. Agriculture is not being in decline like they've claimed, like Bill's claimed.
But they look at the hurricane that hit Jamaica and they say, look, here's warmer water. It's going to be a disaster everywhere. More and more hurricanes. The Arctic ice is still melting. Everything's disappearing. The polar bears are going underwater. I mean, everything they throw up there.
It's just
and backed with
untrue.
Billions of dollars.
It's fear-mongering, disinformation is what they're doing. And that's when I think people are waking up. Before this hurricane season, it was going to be the worst hurricane season maybe ever. Remember that?
I do.
And we haven't had one landfalling hurricane here. And I will remind you that since Donald Trump renamed the Gulf of America, there's not been one landfalling hurricane yet. So I think we ought to rename the Atlantic Ocean to the Ocean of the Americas. You know, to make us even more safe.
Yeah, why not?
but we know these things have been telling us they're factually incorrect and easily disproven. And they have to cherry pick data, fabricate data, go on disinformation campaigns.
Well, let's get down to the
fires.
Let's get down. The fires. Okay, go ahead and continue your thought on the fires. Then I want to pick up something.
Well, if you go National Interagency Fire Centers, if you want to find out about fires in America, that's where you go. And they show a chart that starts in 1983 showing us a great increase in the acres burned. Well, what they don't tell you is they have data going back to 1926, and they hide that data. And then if you go back to full data set, fires were 5 times many acres burned in the number of fires 80 and 90 years ago. And has there been a slight increase since 1983? Yeah, but that's more attributable to changes in our forest management rather than climate change. And so they have to hide the data that doesn't agree with them. Forests are expanding. They're talking about deforestation. No, forests are expanding. For example, in Canada, the boreal forest, the tree line in Canada, since 1900 has moved 100 kilometers farther north. That's a good thing. Think of all the trees that are growing. Deserts are shrinking. The Sahel in the south of the Sahara, 100,000 square kilometers of former desert are now grassland and farmland, where they were desert just 40 years ago.
Let me redirect where some of this has all been aiming anyway. And that is, of course, one, pushing this stuff into immature, young, vulnerable minds, but also the grifting that's been going on. As you pointed out, Bill Gates has spent billions to promote climate alarmist theories, and all these groups that were getting that money are suddenly going to find themselves with their hands out to, hey, can you spare a dime for us to fight off climate change?
Yeah, he's pulling back on his donations. The other one Gates wasn't alone last week, or I guess it was this week. Ted Nordhaus, who was the founder of the institute, I'm drawing a blank here, but Breakthrough Institute. He's also come out saying just about the same thing. He says, I no longer believe this hyperbole. And he went on to talk very much like Gates. And the other person, Kathy Hochul, governor of New York, has come out and said, you know what? We're not going to even attempt to meet our climate goals because it's too expensive, doesn't make any sense. It's going to harm our people. And so she's moving. I mean, we've got this just in the last 5 or 6 days, the last week. And the other big thing that happened last week on Tuesday, was it was huge. Our chairman of the CO2 Coalition, Dr. William Happer, and Dr. Richard Lindzen, two eminent physicists, sat down for a 2-hour plus interview with Joe Rogan that's now been viewed almost 5 million times on both Spotify and YouTube.
Do you think Governor Newsom saw it? They're still pushing their stuff.
I don't know, but it was a wonderful. If you don't go to Rogan on Spotify and look for Happer Lindzen interview, it's just a wonderful description of it's really a philosophical discussion.
Well, I still want to
science and the state of climate science.
I still want to go back and follow the money. Where is all that money that's been dumped on these folks now going to go? Is it going to go to promote the real facts and real truth? Or Al Gore has already got his multi-millions put aside, flying around in his private jet as his carry. They're not going to change their lifestyle, and it's not going to be changed by this money being pulled back. But are they going to wake up themselves or not?
I doubt it. They'll be the last. It's really hard for somebody like John Kerry or any of the others. He's so invested in it. And once you've been invested in a theory, it's hard to admit that you've been wrong. Very few people can do that. Bill Gates, thankfully, is one. Ted Nordhaus is another. Maybe Kathy Hochul, that they're actually looking at the writing on the wall and seeing, the jig is up with the climate grifters, as you called them.
Al Gore?
We can hope.
See,
Al Gore will never change.
Yeah, I didn't think. No. I wanted to test you there, because I thought if you're going to say Al Gore's going to change, I'm betting on the worst team in the NFL to win the whole Super Bowl.
Yeah, Al Gore, he's got too much. Now, by invested, I don't mean money. Too much of his prestige and is what he said forcefully. There was supposed to be no ice at the North Pole, and the northern polar ice caps were supposed to be completely gone. 7 years ago, 2017, they were supposed to be gone.
Yeah.
And there are things like that we can point to.
And a third of the nation underwater.
Been wrong about everything.
And a third of the nation underwater. Jeez. Well, I want to thank you again, Gregory. Gregory Whitestone with the CO2 Coalition, author of A Very Convenient Warming, How Modest Warming and More CO2 Are Actually Benefiting Humanity. And now Bill Gates is one of your apostles, I would say. Thank you, Gregory.
All right. Have a blessed day.
You too.
Thank you. And sleep well. There is no climate crisis.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot. Gregory Whitestone. Thank you. Yeah, there is no crisis, but they're still out there yelling. I mean, they're like the old guy walking around, repent, repent, which I'll always say, yes, we should repent, but the sign is reading, the world's going to end tomorrow because of global warming. No. Coming up, the story behind the story of something that never should have happened.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
Tom Shaw Realtors has been helping sell, buy, lease property all over Missouri for almost 100 years. Call him, 636-532-1922, or visit shawrealtors.com. You want the best place to watch baseball or any sport and be able to enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys? Lit Cigar Lounge. Lit has so many events each month, you need to constantly check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook. You don't want to miss anything. Plus, you can order food from Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, delivered within minutes right to your table. By the way, we're in the season for great patio dining. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta has your table waiting. Listen up. The offer St. Louis can't stop talking about being held over by popular demand. Right now, Renewal by Anderson. Buy any window or door, get the next one 50% off. Plus, you might get 0 interest, no payments for 18 months. This is Renewal by Anderson, the full-service window and door replacement division of Anderson. That's a name you've trusted more than 122 years. Our exclusive FiberX frames, 200% stronger than vinyl. And remember, Anderson products increase your home's value by at least 15%. So make sure you take advantage of the offer while it's still being held over. Schedule your complimentary consultation at rbastl.com. 877-WINDOWS. 877-WINDOWS. Renewal by Anderson. This is award-winning quality, stronger windows, smarter investment. Back pain? Follow me to Esquire Sports Medicine, where they've got your back. Esquire is the oldest sports medicine clinic in St. Louis. Dr. Draghi and his team of chiropractors can get you back to work, back to life without the pain. New patients usually scheduled within 24 hours. 314-644-0885. 644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Well, I started out with $1 lone dollar, gambled with a man and I won me another, bought me a gun and I robbed my brother. I'm bad, but I don't care, boys. Gonna be a millionaire.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Now, Larry Connors with the story behind the story.
It was late 60s, and a phone truck, repair truck, would pull up to a telephone pole outside a home or a business, and a telephone worker, supposedly, would climb the pole and be working on the wires, correcting, maybe making a new connection, or maybe it was not really an employee of the company, Southwestern Bell, as a matter of fact. While it was a Southwestern Bell truck, it might have been a police officer setting up an illegal wiretap. In the state of Texas at that time, you could not get a wiretap granted in the state. It had to be a federal wiretap law. But some police officers began to assume and gather that, we really could begin to tap various criminal elements or those we suspect. And that rapidly accelerated to political enemies of Houston Mayor Louis Welch and even Police Chief Herman Short. How do I know this? I was there. I was there and deeply involved in, to the point that I thought I might be going to jail. These were sometimes wiretaps placed on drug informants or drug deals that they were trying to intercept, were basic police work, good old beating the ground, and hours possibly of observing. You'd end up catching someone dealing drugs. They didn't want to do that. They wanted a shortcut. So they had an arrangement with Southwestern Bell to take a truck of theirs or two from time to time. And I don't know for sure if they did or did not use any employees. Those employees, of course, were being told what they were told by their bosses, who were probably told what they were told by the police. It's never been clear on some of that. And in some cases, police officers themselves learn how to do it. Strap on those climbing jack boots and start going up the telephone pole, get up top and start messing with the wires. Not correcting something that's wrong, but creating a wrong. It went on for at least 4+ years, closer to 6 years. Unauthorized wiretaps carried out by the Houston Police Department. And again, in the state at that time, they could not get a legal wiretap, the city or the state. There were no wiretaps allowed except under federal law. So they knew they were in the wrong. But they had the badge, and they had the authority, and they figured the end result would be okay. These Houston police officers not only illegally installed and monitored dozens of wiretaps without necessary court authorization. They used the information they gathered to convict people of crimes that, yeah, they were probably guilty of, but it was illicitly gained. And there is another part of the story behind the story. There was one suspect in particular they were going after. This guy was a dope dealer dealing with children in schoolyards. I'm talking about grade school, not high school even. Grade school and occasionally maybe elementary schools, handing them supposedly pieces of candy when they were in fact drugs. Again, a simple surveillance technique and effort that might have taken days would have caught the same thing, but it was so much easier. So much easier just go up and wiretap the guy's phone and get information on him and who he was dealing with and where he was getting the drugs. Now, again, that's fine for the feds to do, but I'm stressing to you again, at that point, there was no wiretap law available in the state of Texas for Texas lawmen of any type. Could they have taken their suspicions to the federal agents and turned the case over? They could have, but they didn't want to do that. They wanted the recognition that they brought the guy down. And in this one particular case, they got information they wanted. They made the arrest, and he was going off to jail. But word began to break. There was a lot of illicit wiretapping. I was one of two reporters that had exclusive details of what some of them were doing. How did it begin to come to light? Well, the FBI, on questions being raised, was beginning to take a closer look. For a long time, they were basically ignoring what was happening. There were 9 officers later indicted for illegal wiretapping, stemming from the investigation for their involvement in installing and monitoring unauthorized wiretaps between 1968 and 72. Again, these cases highlighting the issue of local police acting without authorization, which is a violation of the law and certainly a violation of federal law at that point. But they were making busts left and right, and criminals were running fearful. That's okay. I don't care if the criminals are fearful, but if you're not making solid, legitimate cases, they come back and bite you in the butt. And, of course, when some of those officers were facing the possibility of federal jail time for illegal wiretapping, they were quick to roll over. And I'll raise something else. The wiretaps they were putting in place were not just after criminal elements. Herman Short was the police chief at the time in Houston. Herman Short had been put in that position and served for quite some time until they got a second officer in, and he also ended up being prosecuted, which I'll come back to in a moment. But you also had Louis Welch, the mayor of Houston, and he and Short were just like that. If you're watching on Zoom, you know exactly what I'm doing. They were just like that. And Herman Short had some political enemies he wanted to destroy. One of them would be Congressman Barbara Jordan. He didn't like her. He didn't want her to win a re-election, so he was trying to gather information on her that maybe they could use to blackmail and extort her to stay out of the race the next time. That was the whole idea. So once again, telephone company truck pulls up to a pole near her house, her office. A, quote, telephone employee climbs out the pole and begins messing with the wires. Some cases, they were done so sloppily, folks were literally reporting, there's a lot of clicking going on the phone here. What's happening? I mean, it was that sloppy in some cases. In other cases, it ran pretty smooth. No one questioned anything. When Herman Short left the police department, they brought in another police officer by the name of Carol M. Lynn. Carol M. Lynn was aware of all this activity that had been going on. He knew there was a federal investigation underway at that time into the Houston Police Department. He contacted me, an Associated Press reporter, and asked us to meet him at a nondescript building at the Hobby Airport in Houston. We met, and he began to lay out for us what he had. In the time he had been in office, when he went into office, he started trying to get some of these officers to come in and talk to him and say, look, I understand we might be facing a federal investigation. I might be called at some point. I need to know what's the real story. What do we do? What do I need to make sure I don't say that will turn everything over to the feds? And these officers, thinking they were speaking to a guy who was going to work on their behalf, as had Herman Short, basically gutted themselves in front of him, told him everything. And he was recording their conversations in his office. So Lynn came in January of 74. Before the end of 74, he had enough tapes for us to sit down and monitor and use, and we broke the story on a Sunday night in agreement with the Associated Press. We were going to hold it at our station until the 10 p.m. of that one Sunday night, and on that same 10 o'clock hour on that night, the Associated Press would break the story across the state and beyond. Heard enough officers admitting their own guilt. One case involved a guy that was a true drug dealer, and it was easy to catch him, but they took the sloppy way out. Some reporters got called to report their sources on anything they knew. One reporter quickly rolled over. I was not going to give up my source. And now I had a job to leave Houston and come to St. Louis. But a federal judge wanted to see me before he was going to let me leave the city. The rest of the story behind the story when we continue.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
So I hear an out-of-towner asking someone, where's the best place to eat? Before they could respond, I said, Cafe Napoli. Where? Well, I said, Cafe Napoli in Clayton, Napoli 2 in Town and Country, Napoli 3 in St. Charles, right next door to Napoli C, and then you got Napoli Kirkwood, plus you got Napoli Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. You'll find Napoli everywhere. It's not too early to book a party and buy gift cards. Cafe Napoli.
This is Larry Connors, USA. Larry Connors, USA.
Now, the end of the story behind the story.
So I had a job offer to come to St. Louis. And my attorney said, we need to clear this with a judge because he might want to extradite you back, and he wants to know you will not fight extradition, either to be charged or as a witness. So I had to appear in front of the federal judge and admit with my attorney, I will waive extradition if you want me back. And in fact, a few months later, they did want me back to testify in one of the trials. I still had not given up the source, was not going to. They were now just looking for me to validate someone's testimony. I sat in that courtroom, outside the courtroom for 3+ hours, never called in to testify. They finally just said, you're free to go, and I got on the first plane and headed back to St. Louis, free of that extradition hearing at that point. The police chief that came in and did all this and unveiled it, conversations he recorded with at least 10 officers, stepped down in June of 75, a little over a year after he had become chief, because of that controversy and word got out. And all 10 of those police officers charged with illegal wiretapping, all were later acquitted. The chief that actually did the recording of them, convicted of extorting $25,000 from a Houston oil man, lying to a federal grand jury. He went to jail. The other officers didn't. In some cases, they rolled over on each other. One officer did plead guilty and got a 3-year federal prison term, later released after testifying to Congress. All of these were violations of our Constitution and city and federal law. No, I never gave up the source that they wanted. But in this case, if they'd just done simple police work, they would have been able to nail this guy for years. But because they did it this way, he got a slap on the wrist and free to go out and deal drugs again and again. Now you're the story behind the story, you know. There are more elements to it, which I will get into in future days. Story behind the story is a feature we're making on a regular basis as we close out the 6 o'clock hour. And tomorrow, the story behind the story will deal with the man they say killed Halloween. You don't want to miss it. Remember our pledge, one nation under God.
You can hear podcasts of this program at Larry Connors USA Facebook. Larry Connors USA Facebook.
John Bill Roofing reminds you we are in the stormy season, and that means if you have even the smallest leak in your roof, you could soon have a much bigger issue. Call the John Bill to make sure that your biggest investment is protected. That call can save you major dollars. If you do get hit during a storm, John Bill has a rapid response team. Call 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF. 1-800-NEW-ROOF, John Bill. You and I might have something in common, back pain. I can tell you where I go for help. Esquire Sports Medicine, the spine of St. Louis. They can put athletes back on the field so they can clearly help us. Esquire Sports Medicine, hands-on chiropractic help on Big Bend, just north of Highway 40. 314-644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. EsquireSportsMedicine.com. Great patio season to enjoy any of the Cafe Napoli locations. How about the Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield? Enjoying coal-fired pizza, nothing else like it. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield. A few doors down, Lit Cigar Lounge, where you can enjoy premium cigars and whiskeys. Check the Lit Cigar Lounge Facebook for details, plus gift cards for friends. I'll see you at Lit Cigar Lounge in Chesterfield. It's that time of season when families, businesses are moving. For local or long distance, I endorse McGuire Moving. Get a date set soon before the schedules are booked. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. McGuire is constantly giving back to our veterans, such as support dogs for our brave. So with McGuire, you're getting excellent service and helping our vets. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check VincentsJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. VincentsJewelers.com. VincentsJewelers.com. Larry Connors here. Is your home ready for the chilly months ahead? Renewal by Andersen has a buy one, get one 50% off window event. And if you qualify, 18 months, no payments, zero interest. Not sure if it's the right time? Renewal makes it easy. No obligation window inspection. Just find out what new windows might cost when you're ready. No pressure, no hassle. And remember, no one but Renewal by Andersen can offer Fibrex, the proprietary window frame material, 200% stronger than vinyl. Means durability, efficiency, beauty that lasts every season. What are you waiting for? Call 877-WINDOWS or visit rbastl.com and get your consultation. Renewal by Andersen. Superior products, exceptional service.
This is News Talk STL.
You want answers?
I think I'm entitled.
You want answers?
I want the truth!
You can't handle the truth.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Got myself a gun. Mama always said I'd be the chosen one.
3 days after President Trump announced he was running for president, this system was weaponized against him. Jack Smith, who is notorious in prosecutor world as being a Stalin-like, show me the man, I'll show you the crime prosecutor. That's the guy you appoint when you want to get your political opponent. He's a dirtbag. A dirtbag. And I hope he comes before this committee. He's got a lot to answer to. He not only went after President Trump, he went after sitting senators. At the time, I was the chairman of the Republican Attorneys General Association. Ashley Moody was also on the executive board. He came after us. And also hundreds of other people who happened to be Republicans in the United States of America. What else happened? The number 2 prosecutor in Atlanta, a state prosecution of President Trump, which was ridiculous to begin with, somehow meets with the White House. The number 3 person at the Department of Justice leaves the number 3 job at the Department of Justice to go work for Alvin Bragg, a state prosecutor. Why is that? This was an effort to go after political opponents in America like we have never seen before.
That is Missouri Senator Schmidt, Eric Schmidt, pointing out that everything that was taking place during the Biden administration was weaponizing the federal government to go after anyone that believed anything conservative, even independent. If you were not in their camp, if you were not wearing their colors and marching with them, you were an enemy, and they were going to destroy you by whatever means possible. And Eric Schmidt did a perfect job of laying out exactly what they were doing. They weaponized the DOJ, the FBI, the IRS, anything they could to destroy American families, to destroy American principle of innocent until proven guilty, first of all, and secondly, smearing you in front of your family, friends, and your co-workers, and even your employers, costing people jobs, desperate situations, and they did not give a D what happened to you. We're going to get into that in more detail. Thanks for joining us. Hour number 2. Larry Connors USA. Here we are, October 30, 2025. And reminding you, when we're on the air, we are streaming video. You can watch the program right now. You go to NewsTalkSTL Rumble, Facebook or Twitter, or Larry Connors USA Rumble or Facebook. You're going to see me right here in all my glory. Maybe not so much glory, but you're going to see me as we go through the program, and you can watch it. And if perchance you're not able to watch all the way through or even listen all the way through, you can always pull up the podcast later. Available at NewsTalkSTL, LarryConnorsUSA.com, and Larry Connors USA Facebook. We stream on numerous platforms. I really cannot keep up with all of them. I think there might be 6 or more that we appear. You choose what you want. We're not telling you what to do. We would never do that. That is your choice. And I'll also remind you that you can simply subscribe. Go to LarryConnorsUSA.com and mark down you want to subscribe, and we will send it to your email every day. You don't have to go look for it. And if you get caught up and you forget about it, it will be there in your mailbox for you. And you can listen or watch later. And when you do that, I have a request. Please push share. Send it on to others. In fact, if you're listening to us right now on our app, NewsTalk STL, if you got a radio, you got us anywhere. There's a button on there you push, and you can share with others. Say, I'm listening right now to Larry Connors USA. And join us. I appreciate it. With Larry Connors USA, you're always going to get news, analysis, opinion, and education. You're going to leave this hour with more knowledge than you had as we began the hour. Those of us who were with us the last hour, you weren't. Shame on you. I know you can't listen all the time. But if you missed the first hour, you missed some very engaging and informative pieces we presented, including the story behind the story. That appears at the end of every 6 o'clock hour now. And the story behind the story today dealt with police illegally wiretapping citizens. Some were criminals, but they were illegally wiretapping them. So much for that case, right? And how I almost had to, in fact, I did have to go before a federal judge and agree to waive extradition if I left the state and came to the new job here in St. Louis. That is, again, in the preceding hour. If you missed it, pull up the podcast. I'll give you a clue what's going to happen tomorrow on the story behind the story. It's about the man who killed Halloween. That's the way he's been labeled. What did he do? That's tomorrow. I know some of you are saying, you're teasing us, Larry. You're trying to make us listen tomorrow. You're absolutely right. I'm not lying one bit. I'm teasing you to make sure you listen tomorrow. Or if you can't listen then, pull up the podcast. But the man who killed Halloween for tomorrow and our story behind the story. Back to the issue right now with Senator Schmidt calling out what everything the Democrats were doing at all levels, trying to destroy Donald Trump, the MAGA movement, conservatives, independents, anyone who might think for themselves, and that would include you. Even if you're a Democrat, you're not allowed to think for yourself unless you follow the far, far left. They were coming after you, and they did, utilizing every weapon and the full weight of the federal government. I'll give you an example of what they're now talking about. They're basically saying all of this is revenge by Trump, the retribution. It's wrong. It's not revenge and retribution. It's going after justice for those who violated your constitutional rights. Don't you want justice? You want to call it retribution, revenge? I don't care. But I look at it as justice. But they are already coming forward and saying, you just wait. You wait until we get our boot on your neck and we're back in power. Perfect example, Connecticut Democrat Hines reference, if AOC gets elected,
And look, if Lindsey Graham and other Republicans want to go the route of saying it's okay to kill people illegally, just so long as the American public supports it, the American public needs to really think that through. You know, there will be a Democratic president someday, and all my MAGA friends who are, cheering on these illegal killings need to imagine who gets killed when President Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says that it doesn't matter what the law says. She's going to do what she's going to do. So look, I work here, so I understand the complete abnegation of principle and a complete thumbing of the nose at the rule of law, but I would hope that people like Lindsey Graham might not go that path, because it's a very, very dangerous path for this country to go down.
He is speaking specifically about us attacking cargo boats, fast, high-speed boats, leaving Venezuela and trying to get drugs farther up the coast and eventually into America. Drugs that will kill your children, will cripple your family, destroy your family. And once we've got them isolated in international waters and there's no threat to anyone but the guys on the boat, now maybe they didn't know what they were carrying. All right, they didn't know. But let's say they're totally innocent. I've seen one quote from one family member says, "My father was just a fisherman." Yeah. Well, if you're in a boat loaded with kilos of cocaine, and when the boat is exploded by a U.S. helicopter or fighter or drone or whatever they choose, you got bales of cocaine floating across the water. There are going to be a lot of strange fish come out of that area. I have a belief they will be. Their noses might be bigger than any other fish, and they might all look white around the nose. I'm just suggesting. But that's what Congressman Hines was all a concern about, that Trump is not doing this the right way. This is basically just short of a declaration of war. This is not war against a particular country. It is a war against criminals. That's a police action. And if AOC were in the White House doing that, I would also applaud her. But they want you to think, well, they may decide to take that little slip of the law that you're using and turn it into something bigger that will be a noose around your neck. Well, first of all, I don't see AOC doing that. But I will point this out to you. Texas Democrat. Stand back, friends. Stand back. You do not know how big what I'm going to say is going to get. Are you ready? Are you ready? Texas Democrat Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is taking steps to launch a Senate campaign, seriously weighing a bid to replace Senator John Cornyn. Yeah. Texas, don't you dare elect Jasmine Crockett to the U.S. Senate. Well, Trump had his meeting with Xi yesterday and came away, and according to Trump, very successful. They got some trade deals worked out, certainly more soybeans being purchased by China for American farmers. That's going to help them. And also efforts to find other ways to find areas where we can work together. This is their first time to meet in person in 6 years. There was a hope for a de-escalation of any tensions. Trump described the talks held in South Korea as amazing. Beijing said they reached a consensus to resolve major trade issues. They did not come away with any formal agreement. But there was something else. Following that meeting and watching what's been happening with Russia lately, President Trump ordered the U.S. military to immediately resume testing nuclear weapons. We haven't done that for 33 years. And he did it actually in minutes before the meeting with Xi. That's because Russia is beginning to test nuclear weapons again. And Trump realizes we maybe need to step up and do the same. Steve Yates, the deputy security advisor.
The president has shown absolute fortitude and results in closing the border, taking the fight to those that are trafficking on the high seas. And so I think Xi Jinping sees a demonstration effect that President Trump is willing to sit down and make a deal, but he's also to use the leverage of our market and the power of the U.S. military if you mess around in this way. Personally, I consider the chemical precursors to be a weapon of mass destruction. We have casualty rates that are larger than mass wars with this travesty. But I think the president is very serious about it. Lowering the tariffs, hopefully, is an incentive for serious, measurable action. If not, the president says he's going to China in April. Between now and then, if there isn't action, I expect the president to snap back the tariffs and maybe put other pressure.
And that may well happen. That would be coming in April. And about his plan in order to the Pentagon, Department of War, to start testing nuclear weapons again after 33 years. I want you to hear, before we wrap up this hour, from Arkansas Senator Cotton as to why we do need to start that in play. In the meantime, Vice President J.D. Vance says there are a lot of folks who think that I'm supposed to, as is the president, supposed to represent the world. My duties and my first obligation is to this country.
I can believe that the United States should lower its levels of immigration in the future, while also respecting that there are people who have come here through lawful immigration pathways that have contributed to the country. But just because one person or 10 people or 100 people came in legally and contributed to the United States of America, does that mean that we're thereby committed to let in 1 million or 10 million or 100 million people a year in the future? No, that's not right. We cannot have an immigration policy where what was good for the country 50 or 60 years ago binds the country inevitably for the future. There's too many people who want to come to the United States of America, and my job as vice president is not to look out for the interests of the whole world. It's to look out for the people of the United States.
Yes, that's exactly what we want from our president, our vice president, or anyone representing our nation. In the meantime, the Schumer shutdown continues. The economy must be going completely off rail, right? No, not so fast, my friend. Harry Enton, CNN.
Well, you know, Matt was mentioning about the econ playing such an important role in last year's presidential election. The top problem facing the U.S. is economic. Per Gallup, last year, look at this, 43% at this time, 43% of Americans said the top problem was economic. Come to this side of the screen. It's just considerably different. We're talking about 24%. We're talking about a drop of near 20 points. And more than that, we're talking about across all of the different political groups, right? Democrats, independents, Republicans. We see that the percentage who say the top problem is economic has been falling through the floor. And more than that, you know, we're talking about inflation. The percentage of Americans who say that the top problem is inflation has also been falling, which is, I think, very much surprising given all the news that we are hearing about the economy.
It really is surprising. How does this compare to, like, the historical look at how people feel about the economy?
Okay, so, you know, let's talk about, we'll go through history, right? Let's take a look. The top problem facing the United States is economic. In the average midterm election, it's 35%. It's 35%. Look at where we are now. Again, it's 24%. It is lower. Fewer Americans right now are saying the top problem is economic than historically have said that the top problem is economic. So it's not only that the top problem being economic is lower than we were at this time last year, it is lower than we have historically been, despite all the news about how the economy is supposedly softening.
To quote James Carville, that's the money, stupid. Well, the money isn't an issue this time around. But Schumer is. And in fact, one of his own colleagues, Congressman Seth Moulton, Democrat of Maine, said, we're in the second year of the shutdown, or in the second shutdown, because of how ineffective Schumer is. Pin the tail on the donkey. We did it. Coming up, what did we get mineral deals from China? Lock and load, ready on the right.
You are listening to Larry Connors, USA.
I want to tell you more about Wellington Environmental's dustless blasting services. Wellington can blast paint, grease, graffiti, even stripes off parking lots. Truly amazing and powerful. But can Wellington blast something more sensitive? Yes, Wellington can use dry ice to blast soot and odors off smoke-damaged surfaces right after a fire. Currently, Wellington uses dry ice to clean mold off wood inside a home. Why? Well, dry ice immediately disappears, turns into a vapor. That means no mess to clean up, no damaged surfaces. You need to check with Wellington, always researching and practicing with new, better, faster, safer equipment and products for you. And it's very easy to schedule an estimator for your next project. Call Cindy, 314-644-4930, 644-4930. Be well with Wellington. McGuire Moving is silver certified, which means they are great at relocating senior citizens. In fact, McGuire is a household name because McGuire understands the stress involved when moving older adults. So if you or family members need help moving, I highly recommend McGuire Moving. 314-241-0600. 241-0600. Get a free in-home estimate. McGuireMoving.com. So many times, Vincent's Jewelers has helped me surprise someone special. Vincent's locally owned can do the same for you, and you don't have to break the bank to get something really nice, maybe even customized. The smile you're going to get back from that special someone, priceless. Check Vincent'sJewelers.com every day because new items are arriving and there are special deals. Vincent's, my only jeweler. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Vincent'sJewelers.com. Back pain? Follow me to Esquire Sports Medicine, where they've got your back. Esquire is the oldest sports medicine clinic in St. Louis. Dr. Draghi and his team of chiropractors can get you back to work, back to life without the pain. New patients usually scheduled within 24 hours. 314-644-0885. 644-0885. EsquireSportsMedicine.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Oh, smokestack lightning, shining just like gold. Oh, don't you hear me crying? Woo, woo, woo.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
Welcome back. We're having a hard time establishing our relationship, our connection, I should say, to Drew Horn, who is the CEO for GreenMet. Now, GreenMet bills itself as a conduit between private capital and developing critical minerals. Of course, that is part of the discussion that was taking place between Trump and Premier Xi in their meeting in South Korea. While they came away with no formal agreement, the issue had apparently been one way to work out some kind of mineral deals down the road, but it's still very unclear. There was no mention of a breakthrough on TikTok, which we were also told in the beginning it might be crucial. That is, of course, to take the TikTok video sharing app's U.S. operations away from the Chinese parent company for national security reasons. The U.S. did agree to drop part of the tariffs it's leveled on Beijing over the ingredients used in making fentanyl. Trump had imposed several severe tariffs on the U.S. top trade partners for their perceived failure to shut down on that drug. Other tariffs or taxes on imported goods will remain in place. But when it comes to rare minerals, that was to be a key issue. And the point is, we do get a lot of minerals from China. We rely on them. way, way too much, and especially if we're going to move more into AI. So, did Trump actually get anything in return, and where does that stand? I'm looking at some of the latest reports coming out that point out that rare earth stock rally as China is delaying any export controls, I should say, after that meeting. So that suggests it was not the way they wanted it. Now, back in June, Trump had said on Truth Social that China had violated a trade truce as Beijing was keeping controls on 7 rare earth minerals. Well, 7 hours ago, China apparently agreed to delay the introduction of the latest round of controls on rare minerals, but not a rollback. These rare earth minerals are something like 17, maybe 18 different elements which play tiny but vital parts in almost everything you have. Everything in your car and everything else you might use around the house, to yes, planes, and yes, weapons. If we had to rely on an adversary to give us these minerals, that's not good. China is basically using that as its primary negotiating leverage right now to export reductions of some of the imports that have been put on them. When Trump and Xi met in South Korea for that 2-hour summit yesterday, the U.S. president came out and said China had agreed to keep rare earth exports flowing, and in his words, and I'm quoting, the issue was settled. I don't see that here. I don't see evidence that it's settled. Because shortly afterwards, China announced it would pause for 1 year export controls while Beijing expanded its rare earth export regime to include new materials and rules. That's from the Chinese Ministry of Commerce. Now, the pause would leave in effect some restrictions had been introduced back in April, which control exports of another 7 rare earths and minerals, including the rare earth magnets crucial to automakers, defense companies, and chip makers. They went into this, even U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer said, we believe that China would not impose its proposed rare earth controls. But I don't see they came out with any agreement. I don't know if Trump walked away from this meeting with everything he wanted, certainly on this level. Now, we have a lot of these minerals in our own backyard. We can apparently, from everything I've seen, a lot of these minerals are available in the Dakotas, North and South Dakota. We would have to start mining to extract them. And, of course, we have an EPA now that is under a Trump administration, so we should have a right and a possibility to do it. But right now, it does not seem to be happening. Part of the issue also involves, which is big if we wanted to go full electronic vehicles, which we're not going to get that under the Trump administration. And that would be the minerals to create the electric battery equipment and make them more reliable and have a greater allowance of them. Right now, it's still just unclear whether we're going to see China get involved in working with us or they're going to continue to hold it over us. You want my view? I'll give you my view. You didn't ask for it. I'm going to give you my view. They're not going to give up any leverage. They're not going to give up any leverage where they can maybe maintain some control over us. And rare minerals, while we might get a rare reprieve from China, they did not roll back. They simply agreed to delay the introduction of its latest round of rare earth export controls. That's the only deal we walked away with. That is why that's not getting headline news from the Trump administration. These rare minerals, I know it's almost boring talk. I would agree with you, except they have such a very vital part in our nation. We have had multiple rounds of talks over the past several months, and China is moving at a slow walk process. Promising we will free up all the crucial rare earth minerals and guarantee expedited rare earth licenses to U.S. companies. But we don't have it. We don't have it. You know why we don't have it? Because China does not want to give them up. Earlier this month, Beijing actually tightened its control by expanding more restrictions. So if you're looking at just what we came away with, what Trump came away with in the meeting in South Korea with China on this issue, China simply agreed to roll back newly imposed rules, but the initial restrictions unveiled in April appear to stay in place. China for years has built up total control of these minerals as part of their wider industrial policy. Let's put it back down in simple layman's terms, aside from all the talk of the world's leaders. We should at no point be now or in the future subservient to an adversary like China. If we had those minerals in our country, dig them up. We've got an EPA now that will fight against all the lawsuits that will be coming for those who want to protect the earth. We want to protect the earth too. We want to protect our nation. And part of that involves getting those minerals out of the earth where we can use them, because China's already doing it. The U.S. and even Australia did to say they would deepen their efforts to counter China's dominance. One American company is already proving that domestic mine-to-metal production is not only possible, but is underway. In fact, the CEO of GreenMet, which we were unable to get established on the air for you today, says all of this and additional investment and alignment will pivot us from China on critical minerals. Well, that would be great if we could walk away from them and say, you know what? You keep it. No longer interested. Has nothing to do with the price of milk. Has nothing to do with us anymore, because we don't need it. And the day we reach that point, that is when China will come to us and say, hey, we got a new deal for you. And so in the meantime, we continue to do what we can to secure domestic sources and get busy. So we're back to dig, baby, dig, to get those minerals out of the earth and available for what we need in this country. And I'll add to the side, the same thing with pharmaceuticals. We should not be taking any pharmaceuticals supplied and derived from China, period. Coming up, President Trump did say after he finished his talk, we need to maybe step up nuclear testing in our nation, which we have not done for 33 years. Why? Stand by.
You can connect with Larry on Twitter at Larry Connors USA.
We welcome Tom Shaw Realtors, selling, buying, leasing property all over Missouri, almost 100 years. Call Tom, 314-283-5064, shawrealtors.com. Hey, looking for windows that solve your problems and actually add value to your home? Renewal by Anderson. Anderson products increase your home value by at least 15%. Right now, get $329 off every window, $729 off every patio or entry door, and ask about our zero interest plan for 3 years. Renewal by Anderson, the full-service replacement division of Anderson. That's a name you've trusted for more than 122 years. Renewal by Anderson has FiberX frames, 20% stronger than vinyl, built to last. It's why we have more 5-star reviews than anyone in St. Louis. And only Renewal by Anderson backs it up with the nation's best warranty. Schedule your complimentary consultation, rbastl.com, or call 877-WINDOWS, 877-WINDOWS. Renewal by Anderson, superior products, exceptional service. I just checked the events planned at Lit Cigar Lounge, so I'm planning a lot of time there. Top-of-the-line cigars, premium whiskey. Check out litstl.com and join me. Hey, and if we get hungry, Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta, just a few doors down. We can order from the menu, be at our table within minutes. Napoli Brothers Pizza and Pasta in Chesterfield Valley and Lit Cigar Lounge, litstl.com.
This is News Talk STL.
Well, I walk into the room, passing out $100 bills, and it kills and it thrills like the horns on my Silverado grill. And I buy the bar a double round of Crown, and everybody's getting down in this town. Ain't never gonna be the same. 'Cause I saddle up my horse and I ride into the city. I make a lot of noise, 'cause the girls, they are so pretty. Riding up and down Broadway on my old stud Leroy, and the girls say, save a horse, ride a cowboy. Everybody says, save a horse, ride a cowboy.
This is Larry Connors USA. Larry Connors USA.
I think President Trump is once again reflecting sentiment that President Reagan had in the 1980s. They both regretted the necessity of nuclear weapons. They dreamed of a world in which we might not have nuclear weapons. But as long as adversaries like communist Russia and back in the day, and today Russia and communist China have nuclear weapons and they're rapidly expanding their arsenal and they're testing their weapons, the United States can't afford to unilaterally disarm. That we have to make sure that our nuclear arsenal is second to none, that it won't be overmatched by the combined forces of Russia and China, that our aging weapons are still usable, and that our new weapons are designed and made properly. So I agree with what President Trump has announced. It's only sensible that in a world when Russia and China are threatening the United States with a rapidly growing and novel nuclear arsenal, that we have to take steps to defend our way of life, because that's what our nuclear arsenal does. It truly defends our way of life.
That is Arkansas Senator Tom Cotton. And what is he referring to? Well, President Trump yesterday ordered that the U.S. military began immediately resuming nuclear weapon testing. We've not done so for 33 years. And he made that statement right before he walked into the meeting with the Chinese President Xi Jinping. He was on Marine Helicopter 1, flying to meet Xi in South Korea when he put it out on Truth Social, instructing the Pentagon to test nuclear arsenal on an equal basis with other nations. His exact post read, because of other countries' testing programs, I've instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. This process will begin immediately. Russia is second. China is a distant third, but it could be even in 5 years. Russia has already been doing this recently. We told you this the other day. They tested a nuclear-powered cruise missile October the 21st, less than 10 days ago. They held nuclear readiness drills the following day, October 22nd. And then they tested a nuclear-powered autonomous torpedo October 28th, 2 days ago. And apparently Trump had been informed that Moscow was not testing a nuclear weapon. But this information he now has says, yes, they are. Now, what to do about it? Senator Cotton, I think, is right to the point, said, if they're going to start doing that, then we need to. But there are other parts to the conversation. In fact, there is a publication called The Conversation, deals with, as they call it, academic rigor, journalistic flair. I do not know, but if I had to hazard a guess, this is a left-leaning publication. But here's the way they are describing the story in their headline. If the U.S. resumes nuclear weapons testing, this would be extremely dangerous for humanity. Now, you understand we're not talking about blasting a bomb in the air over some city. We're talking about other ways, maybe deep underground or some other process. All it is, it's clear from Trump, he wants the Pentagon to resume nuclear weapons testing immediately. And as this article points out, if that happens, it's going to be inevitably followed by a tit-for-tat reciprocal announcement by other nuclear-armed states, especially Russia and China, accelerating the arms race that once put us all in great jeopardy, which we had moved away from. Well, Russia's already doing it. China might well be doing it. Now you got India and Pakistan. What would they do? The Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty has been signed by 187 states. By states, we're talking about countries. And it is the most widely supported disarmament treaties in the world. We signed the treaty decades ago, but have yet to ratify it. Nevertheless, it is legally bound. We are legally bound not to violate the spirit and purpose of the treaty as we are signatory. So what would be the testing and why did it stop? The purpose of testing in the earlier years, and again, the source I'm going to is probably a left-leaning think tank, but the information appears to be fairly accurate, and that would be a piece called The Conversation. And they point out, in earlier years, the purpose of testing was to understand the effects of nuclear weapons, obviously. For example, the blast damage at different distances. You've seen the video from the nuclear testing above ground that we did in the U.S. back before we had the bomb fully developed. The sheer wind force and the after effect, the mushroom cloud, it's all very frightening. But since the end of the Second World War, we both basically have tried to develop new systems. There have been a number of tests, more than 2,000, trying still to understand exactly how this works. And keep in mind, even though we have not done it since 1992, France stopped in 1996, China and Russia apparently not doing anything in the 90s until just this week and last week, Russia started doing it again. North Korea has been the only country, to openly test nuclear weapons this century, most recently in 2017. There is a concern about, are we going to go to nuclear proliferation again? At this time, there are 9 armed states: the U.S., China, Russia, France, the United Kingdom, India, Pakistan, North Korea, and Israel. There was a time in the 60s, the argument was, we have so many weapons in each arsenal, just the U.S. and Russia at that point, we could destroy the world X number of times over. That's kind of a frightening and at the same time, almost silly concept. I mean, the world's destroyed, it's destroyed. But Trump says right now we are ahead of Russia, but we have to be aware that China is not far behind, and they could be equal to us or even ahead of us in the next 5 years. The Atlantic, which is a leftist publication, says that Trump is very confused about nuclear weapons. In fact, their writer says the president wants to resume some nuclear testing, but doesn't seem to know why. I would expect that from the Atlantic, far left. They simply want to say, they're doing it, so we're going to. And he doesn't even know why. I think he knows why, and that is we've got to maintain a deterrent. If we didn't have that capability, how long do you think the U.S. would last? May I phrase that again? If we did not have the capability to strike back against a nuclear attack, how long would we last? I'm not talking about trying to stop them from hitting us. I'm talking about if we cannot truly go back to their source and destroy what they're doing. How long would we last? It would be more than milliseconds, maybe. But it would be way too close. Slate publication, which is obviously way left-leaning, again wants to point out the very fact that Trump is doing this. Said, what to make of Trump's wild nuclear threat? He's not making a wild nuclear threat. Get that in your head. He says, let's resume testing. Russia is already doing it. China will probably be doing it. North Korea has been doing it. We have not done it for 33 years. Maybe we need to see what we have that really works and what no longer would work, is obsolete. But they say, what to make of Trump's wild nuclear threat? Let's break it down sentence by sentence, as they write on the Slate. And again, this is a leftist publication. They point out what I was saying earlier about how he posted on Truth Social. We want our Department of War to start testing on an equal basis immediately. He later told reporters, although the U.S. had stopped testing nuclear weapons, Russia and China were still testing, so we have to start again. And they add that his statement on social media and the remarks I just quoted you as saying, he told reporters, they call it pure mishmash. What's so mishmash about that statement? This is where when the left cannot get the statement they want and make it work the way they do, you just simply dismiss it out of hand. You're not going to bother looking for any answers. You're not going to bother looking for what is exactly meant. You're just simply going to say something that will make it look bad. It is, after all, Trump. Now, at the same time, I'll give you another source. The New Scientist. I'm not that familiar with them. You want me to guess? Okay, they lean left. But they point out the U.S. is unlikely to test nuclear weapons, despite what Trump says. And why would they say that? Well, according to them, and I can't give you the entire piece because it has a paywall, and I'll be damned if I'm going to get them a dime to see what they have to say. The headline says everything. They have researchers speaking to New Scientists who say there is no scientific need for such tests. They would be purely symbolic, unsettling for global peace, and likely to spark protest among U.S. citizens. Now, that I will grant you will probably happen. They will suddenly have billions of dollars dropped in by the Soros Foundation We were done with the no kings. Now let's get out there with no more nukes, no more nukes. I can see it now. They're going to parade up and down the street. Silly costumes and all. These are the same kind of people that want to talk about defunding the police, and then when they're assaulted and something happens to them or a member of their family, do they call another social worker to come in and talk to their family member that's been killed and those who've lost loved ones? Or do they want justice? The intent of having any major weapon is to avoid war. Every member of our U.S. Armed Forces, and they're all volunteer now, they are in there because they want to serve their country, not to be in a war, but to avoid a war. But how quickly those on the left tend to forget. We had a gathering yesterday at Turning Point USA. Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's widow, was there making some grand statements. And in fact, Pennsylvania Senator Fetterman had high praise for her.
I also got a chance to watch Erica Kirk, how heroic that is, and the courage to, after her happened to her husband as a widow, to be able to get on that stage. Regardless of whatever your political views are, you absolutely have to celebrate and applaud her for the kind of courage to do that now.
Yeah. They were talking to University College students in the University of Mississippi. Massive crowd. Thousands upon thousands in an arena, and many outside that couldn't get in. And they did just as her husband, Charlie Kirk, had done, putting up, "Prove me wrong." And Vance said, "Don't be nervous if you need to work through a question. Think through it and speak it. We're here to have a nice conversation, and we're all supportive of that." One student pressed Vance on several issues as to how he balances his intercultural marriage about restrictive immigration policies. I think the kid failed to hear what he said in the beginning. Think through your question before you open your mouth. So be it. Remember our pledge: one nation under God.